Ukrainian General Staff clarified the results of the drone strike on the Temryuk seaport in Russia's Krasnodar region on December 5th. It was confirmed that 20 storage tanks were destroyed, which is 70% of their total number. A fire is still ongoing at the liquefied gas loading rack. As of the evening of December 7th, the total area of the fire was about 1,000 square meters. Such strikes by the Ukrainian military are aimed at weakening the enemy's logistics, reducing its defense capability, and undermining the military economic potential of the Russian Federation. Meanwhile, the border guards of the Guard Brigade in the southern Slobozhansky direction continue to destroy enemy resources. According to the State Border Guard Service, Ukrainian soldiers managed to hit equipment, communication antennas, and infantry. In turn, the Russian command is concealing the real losses in the Pokrovsk direction and is registering its fallen soldiers as having deserted their units. Agents of the partisan movement Atesh are documenting this practice in the 30th Russian Separate Mechanized Brigade. In this way, military commanders are hiding the number of casualties after large-scale attacks on Pokrovsk and avoiding complaints from the soldiers' families. A similar scheme is used in cases where servicemen go missing during chaotic assaults on the city, as well as for those who are eliminated by their own blocking detachments. According to Atesh agents, there are already enough so-called deserters among Russian soldiers to form a separate brigade.
The main resource of the enemy today is its infantry, and he throws his infantry into battle to advance, infiltrate, and report as quickly as possible on the capture of Pokrovsk. All the deadlines for taking Pokrovsk have been missed, but nevertheless, the objective remains. And as long as they're willing to pay for accomplishing all their objectives, including taking Pokrovsk, with human lives, well, that's the price they will keep paying. So, I urge you not to be surprised by the huge losses the enemy is suffering in the city of Pokrovsk or anywhere else. For them, it's a resource they throw in to achieve their goals. We are destroying the enemy in Pokrovsk. We are systematically clearing them out, destroying them. But unfortunately, Russia has the ability to bring new, fresh resources into the city. It's like we cut off the head and it grows back again.
And in the Lyman direction, the Russian army is attacking the positions of Ukrainian defenders near the settlements of Novovoroyane, Shandrigolov, Drobyshev, and towards Lyman. In the Kostyantynivka direction, the enemy tried to break into the Ukrainian defenses near Pleshevka, Sherbinivka, Yablonivka, Rusinov Yar, and towards Sofivka. And in the Pokrovsk direction, Russian occupiers attempted to push the defense forces from their positions in the areas of Rodinske, Mirnohrad, Kotlin, Udachne, and towards Novopavlivka.
Fighting is ongoing in Mirnograd, and it might even be more intense there than in Pokrovsk itself. Oh, right, in Pokrovsk, the line is being held along the railway. The enemy is trying to cross it near the train station and further on, but the fighting is happening precisely for those settlements. This particular location is situated directly south of Krasny Lyman, specifically in the area known as Rodinka, where it is still genuinely possible to maintain some effective defensive lines, a number of which can be strategically utilized for essential logistical purposes. Most of this is being done by our heavy drones. That alone speaks to the seriousness of the situation. But our defenders continue to fight, and all these propaganda claims that Pokrovsk, let alone Kupyansk, has been taken are fake, with all the consequences that come with that.
Meanwhile, even in foggy conditions and poor visibility, Ukrainian drone operators continue to destroy soldiers of the Russian occupation army. The Typhoon Unmanned Systems Unit is working professionally. According to the commander of the National Guard of Ukraine, Alexander Pivnenko, National Guard units destroyed 4 tanks, 7 armored vehicles, 28 vehicles, 3 MLRS, and 9 ammunition depots along the entire front line over the past week. In addition, Ukrainian defenders struck more than 70 shelters and locations where enemy personnel were concentrated. And in the past 24 hours, Ukraine's defense forces eliminated 810 Russian occupiers. Thus, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the total losses of the Russian army since the start of the full-scale war have exceeded 1,181,000 personnel. In addition, the day before, Ukrainian defenders destroyed 2 tanks, 1 armored combat vehicle, 10 artillery systems, and 50 units of enemy automotive and special equipment.
Yuri Fedorenko is joining us now, commander of the 429th Separate Achilles Unmanned Systems Regiment of the Ukrainian Ground Forces. Hello, and glory to Ukraine.
Glad to have you. Glory to the heroes.
Yuri, of course, I have a question for you about Kupyansk. I was reading some analysis today, going through different reports. They keep using the pipes. As surprising as it may be, you mentioned in previous broadcasts that the pipes are under the control of Ukrainian drones, but they're still stubborn, as if making one last assault, and keep using these pipes. Tell us about this phenomenon in the Kupyansk direction.
There are two reasons why the enemy acts this way. The first reason is that for a long time, they tried to build bridge crossings over the Oskil River from the left to the right bank. I've cited these statistics before. About 35 pieces of engineering equipment, which are responsible for the preparatory work for building pontoon crossings, were destroyed by our regiment in the forest. You have to understand that there are other units of the defense forces carrying out combat missions here, and as a result, the total number is much higher than what we alone have destroyed. As a result, the enemy is forced to move from the left to the right bank, performing the following risky maneuver. This is when their soldiers run from the left to the right bank, trying to pick spots where the greenery, the forest, at this time of year, comes as close as possible to the river, to the shrapnel-strewn bank. Then, they try to quickly cross the river and spread out on the right bank. And how do they cross the river? It's either a truck-tired tube, inflated, or a raft, or a rubber belt. That's how the enemy gets from the left to the right bank. And it's important to understand that as the enemy approaches the crossing, they take losses. During the actual river crossing, the enemy also takes losses. Until they manage to spread out on the right bank, they continue to take losses as well. As a result, they're forced to look for the solution that best suits them for accomplishing their mission, namely holding the bridgehead on the right bank. That's why the enemy is actively carrying out assault operations in the areas of Dvorochansky and Malov. Why is this important for the enemy? They're trying to expand the bridgehead that lies beyond the state border that lies between the Ukraine and the Russian Federation in order to supply their right bank bridgehead by land. And for this, so that there's no need to force the Oskil River. But since they are meeting fierce resistance and can't accomplish this task, Russian generals are trying to use any means possible to resupply, both technically and with personnel, the group located in the northern part of the city of Kupyansk. And as a result, they're trying to repair the pipes. These pipes are being buried. Periodically, the enemy comes out on the right bank, and these exits are under the control of the defense forces. For the most part, the enemy, when moving around, and when they come out into the open, they are attacked both by our drones and by other strike means. Accordingly, the defense forces are doing everything possible to repeat this situation again and for a long period of time, to make it impossible for the enemy to move around by using engineering structures such as the gas transportation system. That's why the fighting continues, and I have to say that. People often ask, how do they even get the courage to crawl into that pipe? You have to understand, it's not about courage. It's about the number of personnel that the Russian Federation has and the methods they use to manage that personnel. Those who refuse to carry out the task and crawl into the flooded pipe, well, there are also other details that can't be disclosed. If someone refuses, they're shot in front of the formation, or the enemy uses some twisted tactics. A long wait for death. What that means is they tie up their own soldiers. Some are tied to a tree, some are just bound so they can't get up, and then they wait for a Ukrainian drone to attack. But we don't know about this, so in a way, it's as if the Russian Federation itself is executing its own soldier. For us, that's a heat signature that belongs to the enemy, because there are no civilians in those areas, and it must be destroyed. Accordingly, thanks to their media, public channels, and videos from soldiers' phones that they post on their social networks, it becomes clear. It's obvious that this is one of the ways the Russian operational forces are managed. That's how they treat their soldiers. I have to tell you, the situation at the front is generally very difficult, and it's very intense. But the enemy is suffering enormous losses, and the results they're getting on the battlefield are still not really connected to actual actions of occupying our territories. They're connected to the millions and millions of dollars the enemy is pouring into their propaganda. We talked about Kupyansk, when the enemy would raise the Russian flag here and there, just to take a picture for the media, and then to post it on their social media, spread it around, and claim that the enemy has supposedly taken control of this or that area. And it doesn't matter to them that after raising that flag, that rag, in reality, just a few seconds or dozens of seconds later, the enemy is destroyed by our drone systems or other firepower. The enemy is doing exactly the same thing now in Loveshots. There was bad weather, thick fog. As a means, the infantry unit did a very good job against the enemy, but the enemy managed to infiltrate in small groups into different parts of the city itself. Love chance. And the common goal is not to gain a foothold, control Ukrainian logistics, or carry out military tasks, but to raise this flag and take photographs when the fog clears. Therefore, we must always use the information that the General Staff provides. Only they know full information on the Air Force line and touch. Of course, as a nation, intelligent and educated, Ukrainians, I believe, have a high level of education overall. We should look at other sources of information, but always make decisions with a cool head. And I am convinced that Ukrainians can tell what is black, what is white, and can distinguish lies from the truth.
And it's important to clearly understand that the objectives haven't changed, really. So, Yuri, as you said before, the goal to occupy all of Kupyansk, that was their objective. So they're carrying it out. And as for the methods, as I understand it, they're using any means possible. Whatever they can think of, whatever they see. They see pipes, they crawl through pipes. Well, now I'm speaking a bit sarcastically. So the objective to occupy Kupyansk is still there. That's why they're trying to achieve it. Despite the massive losses they're suffering, and as I understand it, will continue to suffer. I mean, they're gonna keep doing this to the very end. I just want to understand. Or will they eventually stop at some point?
The scale of war, it's much more complex and much scarier. Not for the regime or to give up, but the enemy is trying to create an information pretext. Some like Donetsk, Luhansk region, the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. There's also Kherson region, and we have Kharkiv region, which is partially under occupation, as is Zaporizhia. But the enemy is putting special emphasis on this. Donetsk region, this is what they keep highlighting. And they're trying to apply political pressure on Ukraine through our allies, supposedly suggesting it's possible to withdraw without a fight, and everything that comes with it. In reality, this is just a bluff to ensure the actual execution of the combat missions they've set for themselves. Russia has planned a step-by-step occupation of all Ukrainian territories, both the left bank and the right bank. Russia plans to destroy Ukrainian statehood, both on the battlefield, by advancing deeper into our territories, as they see it, and through political means. Not only within our own country, where there are still plenty of opportunities who secretly work for the Russian Federation, but also by leveraging our partners, many of whom really don't understand the true situation. That's why the Russian Federation's objective is to occupy all of Ukraine and destroy Ukrainian statehood. And in addition, in order to erase statehood, they need to destroy those in whom this statehood resides. And who are they? They are the citizens of Ukraine. And that's why, since the enemy can't achieve the desired result on the battlefield, neither in Kharkiv, nor in Donetsk, nor in Zaporizhia, nor in Kherson, they're trying to target the main source. The main source, the source of national resistance to the Russian Federation, that is, the Ukrainian people. As a result, they're using China to gain the capability to manufacture drones and carry out chaotic strikes on civilian infrastructure, on residential buildings. Why are they doing this? They do this so that Russia clearly understands that the front will hold as long as it is supported by the Ukrainian people. It is one whole. The army, it is meant to win battles, but it is always the people who win the war. And so Russia, through terrorizing our civilian cities, is trying to make Ukrainians leave the country to save their lives. The more people leave for abroad, the fewer working groups we will have, and the less support there will be for the defense forces. And the less the rear supports the front, the less front there is. The ability to hold back the enemy at the line of contact and prevent him from carrying out the tasks he sets for himself. So I am asking all Ukrainians in every city, even those that are attacked less than others, please, friends, protect your lives. If there's an air raid alert, be sure to go to a shelter. Protect your life. Help those who are near you. If someone can't afford to buy a warm blanket, buy a battery, or charge their phone, help them. We must endure. We must continue to stay in our country, work, and support the defense forces. And together, we can definitely endure this harsh, this unjust, this difficult war of annihilation.
You know, there's a lot of talk right now about a quick peace. Well, absolutely, as you rightly said, and I really wish that Ukrainians have still kept their critical thinking. It hasn't gone anywhere. Even though, yes, every night Ukrainians don't get proper sleep. Well, I won't complain because the situation at the front is much more difficult. But what I mean is, sometimes it seems like this critical thinking should run out at some point. But it doesn't run out, and thank God, yes, that's a good thing. And there are a lot of these conversations about a quick peace. Obviously, a quick peace could come even tomorrow, but then we'd have to give up a lot, right? And now Trump is insisting on this quick peace and so on. There are a lot of discussions about this. I want to ask you, from your perspective, well, first of all, from the perspective of what's happening at the front, is a quick peace even possible?
You're absolutely right. Look, in order for a political solution to be possible, either one side has to lose the ability to defend itself, or the other side has to lose the ability to carry out offensive assault operations. As a result, if one side can't defend itself, there is a complete occupation. Can the defense forces defend themselves? Yes, and we're doing it effectively and with quality. This is being recorded along the entire line of contact. We're hitting the enemy at ratios of 1 to 10, even 1 to 20 in some directions. That's a very high result and a testament to the heroism of the Ukrainian military and the Ukrainian people. The second component, as the Russian Federation lost its ability to conduct offensive assault operations? No. I have a question. Why does anyone think that Putin, or in some way China, are directly involved in this? That they should be the ones to stop the fighting? Russia's economy can still sustain the war for a certain period of time, maybe a year, maybe 2. They have enough people to keep fighting. What should force Russia to give up on continuing the hostilities? I don't see any such preconditions. That's the first thing. Second, why is this whole show being put on? Well, you have to understand that behind all these negotiations are the economic interests of various countries, including the United States. So what does Putin need to do? And what does he do very well? He drags things out for a long time. That's an expression meaning he shows some intentions, but in reality, he has no plans to follow through, and he's not interested in doing so. So you can talk about peace for a long time, but in fact, Putin is not ready for it. Right now, he's reaping huge benefits from the fact that the world is talking about a possible ceasefire. Let me explain to you why this is happening. When we talk about peace, as normal people, it's our psychology. We're used to certain cyclical things. What do I mean by that? For example, we go to kindergarten, we know we'll spend a few years there, and then comes school, a new stage. That stage ends and school begins. 11 or 12 years in school, and then comes university. That stage ends, and then comes university. After university, we already start dreaming about getting a job. In other words, our lives are planned out into certain stages. But if we talk about the Russian-Ukrainian war, there are no stages, and there can't be. For as long as the Russian Federation has existed, and as long as Ukraine has existed, we've always been in a state of conflict. This neighbor, they're out of their mind. They will always try to conquer the state of Ukraine if they feel they have any strength. Let's move on. There is no end to this war. People are searching for an answer as to when this might end. And so, during this planned operation, the West, for some reason, is saying, let's sign some points that are disadvantageous for Ukraine, that don't give us security guarantees, that don't allow us to preserve Ukrainian statehood, in the versions that were in the original draft. But we are starting to talk about peace. What's happened in the state of Ukraine? As normal, rational people who are used to certain cyclical things, we start hoping that the war might end. What's happening inside our country? Those who are subject to military service are not joining through recruitment in the numbers that are needed. Why? They think, well, why go if the war is ending? I'll just finish my work here at the factory, I'll finish up at the service station. Otherwise, I'd have to leave my job, change my way of life, get recruited, go through military training, and then go off to fight. Why bother if the war is ending? A company that serves the military-industrial complex, even with money, thinks, do we really need to spend all this money on buying components? If the war ends, we won't be able to sell drones or other equipment needed for combat anymore. So they buy less, and as a result, drone production drops. All of this leads to a certain rollback within the country. Well, I won't even get into how a soldier feels on the battlefield, risking his life every day, having to complete his mission, having to take out the enemy, to cut through them, carrying out counterattacks, and everything else that comes with military service decisions. This also has a negative impact. So what's happening in Russia at the same time? How do Russian men see things? If the war could end, well, I've got loans, microloans, all that stuff here. But for mobilization, they pay $5,000, $7,000, even $10,000 depending on the region. Maybe when I sign a contract with the Russian armed forces. After signing this contract, I'll get the money, and then the war will end, so I won't have to fight in Ukraine against Ukrainians. But if the war doesn't end, we end up losing our capabilities. The Russian Federation has a large number of personnel, which it uses as its main tool for conducting assault operations. So, friends, we need to prepare for a war that could drag on. Another year, 2, maybe even 3. If the war ends sooner, we'll still have it. This energy, this drive. With it, we'll be able to rebuild our country, make it safe and prosperous.
Yuri, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on air. You're always welcome on Freedom. Yuri Fedorenko, commander of the 429th Separate Achilles Unmanned Systems Regiment of the Ukrainian Ground Forces, was with us on the line.
Subscribe to The Gaze and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukrainian all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.